Hi, I'm Nick Haig, and welcome to the B2B Insights podcast. Today, I'm delighted to have Lisa Best from Camira join me on the CX Practitioners podcast series. For those of you that don't know Camira, they're a global chemicals company serving customers in water-intensive industries. Camira has two main segments, pulp and paper and industry and water. They're headquartered in Helsinki, Finland, and have an annual revenue of around 2.7 billion euros and over 5,000 employees globally too. Therefore, it's no mean feat to be in charge of a CX program like this to educate inwardly 5,000 colleagues and deliver a consistently global experience externally to their customers worldwide. But we've got the person that knows how that can happen. So welcome, Lisa, to the B2B Insights podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Oh, thank you. Well, although Camira headquartered in Finland, you're not Finnish, and the accent probably gives the game away there. But based in Atlanta, but part of the global CX team, and you've spent the last 17 years working at Camira. But I'd like to start today's conversation at the beginning, because you started out as a graphic designer. So what has been the journey like from graphic designer to working within the customer comms and managing Camira's VOC global program?
Yeah, I mean, it's been a really great journey. Actually, when I started with the company back in 2003, I came on board as an assistant, working for what was then a new line of business, because we had just made an acquisition. So this was like mining and process additive chemicals, and then also oil and gas.
Yeah.
Type of chemistry. And now that oil and gas group is part of our industry and water, like you mentioned. And so, with this being a new line of business, there was so much room for growth and opportunity. And what they really needed, they didn't have a lot of, marketing materials and things that they could really, give to the customers and talk with them about. And so there was, this educational piece that needed to take place within the company as well as with the customers. And so they started asking for a lot of marketing materials. Now, I come from an insurance background. So my prior life before Camira, I worked in property and casualty insurance as an insurance analyst.
Right.
So this was something completely new to me, but they were like, hey, could you start to help us with this? And so I really took an interest in it and thought, wow, this is really exciting and really interesting, and gives you that opportunity to really do something creative, and what you feel is meaningful in talking to your customers. So I was really interested in it. But of course, this is not my background, and I don't have a formal education in it. So at the time, we had this very small regional marketing department. This wasn't going on globally. This was more for the North America region, and had a colleague there that was part of the communications department. And she really mentored me and really helped me in this and understanding our brand and how we do things and what those key messages were. And so then I started some formal training and graphic design so that I could start to help with the layout of these materials and understand how to take that message forward. So did that for 3 years to get this education. And during that time, worked in a couple different roles, moving within Camira. They actually needed some help in the human resources department. So just thinking from a communication standpoint, being able to onboard employees. So it's really exciting because I was the first face, that our employees were meeting when they came to Camira for the first time, and, and helping them get acclimated. And I really made a lot of great connections. And I mean, that networking, it really paid off, because once I started to, be more involved in communications, and then eventually into the customer experience type of program, then I had this network. And I think it's so important to know different people within your company so that you can understand what it is that they do and how they're interacting with customers. And
Absolutely.
It really helped move me along in that process. So that was really great. And then, of course, there's reorganizations and things that happen. And so we developed this really great global communications team, and within that, the customer communications team. So I joined as part of that, and doing marketing materials, that's exciting and fun and creative, but you start doing that for a while and you need a challenge. You need to start thinking about other things that you can do. So then there was this opportunity to join as a program manager or project manager for the Voice of Customer program. And customer experience, that's not my area of expertise, and it was new for me. But looking at it from a project management standpoint, I really wanted to interact more so on a global level with our colleagues, and also to take on more project management. So it really helped me, and then I just became so interested in everything about the customer experience journey, and it's been a really great transformation. So
we've been working together for a few years, but I didn't know that background. But it resonates with me on so many levels, and from what I hear from others as well, Lisa, because I think continually learning, being pushed around an organization, so therefore getting to know different business roles, so you can resonate, empathetic with them if they're having any challenges, how they do their job, how they deal with customers or not, in terms of if the back office, and like you say, I think we're in homeschooling at the moment, here in lockdown in the UK where I'm speaking, and so there's homeschooling with my youngest, and I'm looking at some of the topics he's talking around, and I actually think he'd be more interested in customer experience, because everyone that does get into that, they really understand that. But yeah, other topics, I won't go into that. I'm going off par there, but I think everyone that starts to read up on it and get interested, that they then just end up being so passionate about it, they follow that passion and put it into their roles themselves.
Yeah, and I think the other thing, you can see it in every aspect of your life. I mean, of course, we're all doing business with all different types of companies, and you really start to think about, what type of customer experience am I receiving? How is this for me in dealing with this company? And I mean, you can just think about it on so many different levels. It's really interesting.
You do. You come highly critical wherever you go in life, or whatever touch points you have, whether it's consumer or your professional life. That's for sure.
That's so true.
So you've been with Camira for 17 years. That you've moved around and had different roles, but and then as you said, that the global Voice of the Customer team was put together. So how did the CX journey begin for Camira? Where did the initiative come from, and when did it start?
Well, it was probably, it started really from this intuitive need within Camira. Okay, so as you mentioned, we're this global company. We're operating in over 100 countries, 5,000 employees. Customers are really our focus, and communication is the key to the relationship. So it was really important, to start trying to collect that feedback in a more organized and systematic fashion. Yeah. Then also part of our ISO certification, that's one of the requirements, is that you have to measure your customer satisfaction and prove to them that you're being able to do that. So in 2015, Camira put together this team of, really passionate, customer-focused people from both the business and then also the operational side, to start developing customer experience program, which really, starting with the Voice of Customer survey. So, which is where we kind of are in our journey, and starting to move forward. We have, it's been quite progressive, and still have a way to go, a long way to go. I mean, you just develop and you improve every day and start to really move along that journey. But it's exciting to see the development and the future possibilities of where you can go with it.
Yeah. And we, B2B International, we've been working with you for close to 3 years now, and over that time, lots of change, as you say. You're constantly listening, constantly adapting, constantly making things better for the customer. But But if we think back to the start of that journey, what would be your top tips for other listeners who are looking to embark on implementing a CX program for their company?
I think by far the most important is really buy-in within your organization. I think it's one of the single most important factors in my mind. I mean, it's essential that you have the support of your business leaders, those with a customer-facing role, to understand and appreciate the value of collecting and analyzing your feedback.
Mm.
I mean, you have people that say, I know my customers. I mean, especially with Camira, our customers, they're on site, oftentimes daily
Yeah.
and working with customers. And so they have a very close relationship. So it's helping them understand, hey, and we appreciate that, and that's great. But what we need to look at it collectively. And not only do we need to look at it collectively, but we need to look at it from different touch points.
Yeah.
So you have a great relationship, but we need to understand as the customer is working through different, parts of our organization, whether it's, customer service, it's invoicing and all these different touch points that they go through, and how satisfied the customer is with all of that. And I think when you do that, then you're really able to see that it's, if there's bottlenecks and where you might have to improve within your internal processes to help improve that. And the other part of it is, I think that, it's what you are willing to tell your direct contact at a company might be different than what you might tell an external third party. So sometimes you might feel more comfortable just thinking overall about your experience and maybe giving more information that you might not get just asking someone. I mean, I just went through this just in a performance discussion where my team that I work with for Voice of Customers giving feedback to me. And it's really nice to see that, that they feel open enough that they're able to tell someone else, this is what I feel she does well, and this is where I feel that she can improve. And that's highly valuable information.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like you say, it's often sales people, they are very sensitive about some strangers, some strange company coming in and speaking to them. They've got the relationship, but I think the way that you eloquently put it there, Lisa, is being able to expand it out. You have got the good relationship, but there's other people, of course, in that decision making, and also there's other areas of the business that they interact with, and then, as you say, going to an external party, it's having an impartial view. You can talk different things to someone when you've got different relationships. So it definitely helps to put it like that. But having buy-in is the first, as you say, the first step there when embarking. And when we did do your initial CX program deep dive, actually, for Camira, the NPS was strong. I hope you don't mind me saying, but it was 33. Actually, it was it was a very much I suppose fitting for a B2B market. But over the last few years, this has risen to 44 and is even higher in some pockets of the business. I mean, I think if you start to segment the business, we've seen 53 in the I&W part of the business. So we've really seen a lot of change there. It's not always easy from such a strong start in order to start to make these differences. What do you think that the catalysts are for driving this positive change globally within Camira?
I'd have to say, number one, it's our people. I mean, Camira's relationship with customers, it's absolutely the key to our success. We have these really dedicated and customer-focused people within Camira in all parts of our organization, and especially in the customer-facing roles. One of the things that we see from the customer feedback and measuring this is that customers consistently rate their Camira contact really, really highly.
Yeah.
And, they really appreciate their expertise and the service attitude that they provide to them. And, as I mentioned, they're working with them, on this daily basis. So it's the customers remember that.
Yeah.
And I think that they really start to take that into account. And even when there might be problems in other ways, maybe in a process or something, and how they're dealing with us, it's really those people, on the ground that are working with them every day that make such a big difference. But of course, we all matter. Customer experience, that goes across all of your organization. It all has to work smoothly.
No, absolutely. Well, and I think it's, you started it with an NPS of 33 when we first had that stake in the ground. So, the processes, everything in place, good quality products, delivering against those basics. And we often see it actually in B2B markets, that there's a people relationship factor, but you've just enhanced that and listened more to the customer, and then made some of those changes, and that they're more readily available to answer those questions of customers, the people. So you've got closer, you've built stronger relationships on the back of the survey itself, which the NPS just being one of those metrics definitely shows that the change, and it's been recognized by your customers.
Yeah, I think one of the other things that has been really good, we have these must-win battles. So these projects within Camira where we're taking a look at, what's going on with customers and our own internal processes. And one of these must-win battles was succeeding with customers. So really highly focused on that, and understanding their needs, and then trying to take a look at, at our product portfolio, and really reducing the complexity there, and trying to offer, more consistent service. That was part of our service optimization. And then also we had another must-win battle that was on boosting operational excellence. So I think that, these things that we did internally to try to really work on, processes and how we're optimizing those. I think that customers really start to appreciate that. It starts to show to them that, hey, now you're a little easier, becoming easier to do business with. And I think that's really, really helpful. And it starts to show in their satisfaction.
Absolutely. And I think, building on that people side of things, that's all well and good, isn't it? But it can only get you so far. And that ease of doing business, and especially with regards to optimizing the way that we can do things, it's the processes matched with the people. It truly is a winning formula, as you've shown within Camira. So when you when I give those figures of 33 up to 53, it's an metric like NPS sometimes looks plain sailing if you look at the general upward trend of how you've been able to match your service delivery to expectations of your customers. But I know it's not as easy as that. It's not always perfectly correlated.
No.
What are the key challenges that you've faced or had to overcome during that time?
When it comes to, for customers to be able to see that, I think it's everybody within, the organization working together and being dedicated to, because a lot of times you have these extra projects, it brings extra work. We all have our own roles within the company. And then when you have these extra projects to try to improve, these are extra things that people take on. And there were so many people across the organization that were willing to do that. So, they're working long hours and stepping outside of their, normal everyday responsibilities to really dedicate and help the company improve. I think that's a major challenge that that we all face, that we would have to overcome, is just being able to think beyond your own role and think about the bigger picture here and try to contribute to that. I just know it. I'm just thinking, also the Voice of Customer program. There's been so many challenges there that we've really had to overcome in order to be able to see these the improvements in the NPS, but just in improvements in the feedback that we actually receive. I think one of the things you have to really make sure that you've got the right metrics,
Yeah.
so that you can get the data that's bringing value to your organization. Because if you're not bringing value, with your voice of customer program or your overall customer experience program, then it's just another task. It's just checking a box. Yeah, we do that. We measure it. But I mean, you really have to take action on it, and you really have to start to think about, okay, what information do we need? Like, what's really important here? And if you can find information from your customers, and you can somehow correlate that to the business. Okay, how is it helpful in your business endeavors? How does it help you execute strategy? And bottom line, how does it help you increase your revenue?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're doing it for a reason, this as well.
That's right.
So, it's got to be a win-win, hasn't it? The customer can't win
Yes.
every time.
Absolutely. I mean, that's what we're all in it for. Everybody has to make money to stay afloat and
Yeah.
profitable. But yeah, I mean, and I mean, for us, just changing some of the questions that we asked. That was one of the great things that B2B brought to us, when we all first started having those conversations when we were going through our RFP, and you guys took a look at what we had and said, hey, have you thought about measuring this? And, I mean, when it came to ease of doing business, what about your competitors? How do you compare to your competition? And it's really helped bring another level of information that our organization finds extremely valuable. And not only that, but then just changing the way that we did this, where we started to, instead of just doing this once and done, once a year, where we got the information and
Yeah.
and you start to, you talk about it, you present the results, and you try to take some action on it, and then it's kind of out of your mind. But then to spread it out so that you're kind of doing it throughout the year and you're getting this pulse of information has made a huge difference for us, because now we can take a look at, if there's some type of change in the business, we can correlate to see if there is some type of if customer feedback is changing based on that. You can
Yeah.
see how customers are satisfied with it. It's fantastic information.
It allows you as an organization to be more agile, doesn't it? To
It really
change. You have got the finger on the pulse in terms of what customers are experiencing and want. And we know in this current environment, changing needs is definitely something that's happening more frequently than not. So
Yeah.
having a pulse in place. But I think to your main point there, it's not easy. There's lots of different things that you've got to do, and you've got to bring that change about. Otherwise, it can wither and die in terms of an initiative.
It
Yeah.
can. And there's that engagement piece. I mean,
Yeah.
that's really the biggest challenge for us, because you don't want this information to come across as just this corporate initiative. It's coming from up top and it's passed it, because then you start to get some resistance, or maybe not even resistance, but just fatigue over it. Like, oh, you have another corporate initiative and this doesn't really involve me. This is just
Yeah.
something you need to do. That engagement piece has been something that we've really worked on very, very hard over the last, I'd say, 18 months, and really had some very positive changes with some of the things that we've implemented. I mean, just something as simple as that has been set up, just a notification that goes out to our salespeople, like, hey, you've received feedback, go
Yeah.
take a look at it. And it's, and the way that we worded it, it's when the communications part really comes in handy for you, is like, hey, you've received great feedback, congratulations. And people get excited about it. I mean, I've seen them
Sure.
sharing it with their team members and their managers, and and the other great thing, that because it's really valuable information and we've really started to get, the organization more engaged. I mean, people are doing things so far as to, take a look at the data, and then, or, the data, the feedback, and working with their team members to actually use it as part of their performance
Yeah.
process, reviewing their performance, like, hey, were you able to overcome these challenges with customers? And I think once you start tying it, into objectives and, and key performance indicators, it really starts to make a difference.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you make such a great point there, Lisa. I mean, too often it's seen customers, a VOC program might be seen as getting bad news to work on it to better it. And of course, that's part of it. But people love having good news. People love being
Yes.
praised. People love saying you did a good job. And without that, actually, sometimes customers don't pick up the phone and say, by the way, you did a great job today, because it's, it's hassle and they're just getting on with it. So
Yeah.
it's really good to have that voice to be able to share the good and the bad, and it does mold in terms of individuals and therefore company goals and strategy.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think,
It really does.
I mean, tied into that, I was going to ask a question. We know it's so important to have these customer experience initiatives. What I really like about the Camira program and how you've grown this is so that it doesn't be repetitive, or it's not just feeding back a couple of metrics. Say, you developed themes around hot topics like COVID-19 performance, sustainability. Can you just talk to the listeners about what impact these have had when sharing these findings internally?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a really exciting piece of it. I'm glad that you mentioned it because it's brought just a new level of information and excitement to the program
Mm,
that is so incredibly valuable. So it really started with the realization that, past year survey data, customers were constantly mentioning proactivity. They were wanting their Camira reps to be more proactive. And it meant something. We could tell that it really meant something to different customers. It was something maybe completely different from one customer to another. And we wanted to understand a little bit more about that. So we started having these deep dive questions where we were asking specifically, okay, what is it that makes a proactive company?
mm,
What are you looking for? How can we meet those expectations? Specifically within your company, what is it that you need? And we got a lot of really great feedback about that. So then what we did is we took this information to the sales teams,
yeah.
and we gathered some sales experts, so some directors within the different sales organizations globally, and presented this data to them and just kind of started a conversation around it, like, okay, this is what customers are asking for. What are our challenges internally that keep us from being able to meet that? Like, what is it that we really need to do to improve upon it? And it really started some great conversations with
Mm,
the company. And then we shared it with the rest of the organization and asked them to start thinking, to themselves, am I being proactive? How can I help? Because it's not, you don't want the customer satisfaction to fall solely on the sales department. It's because it takes everyone. So
yeah.
okay, what if I'm not in a customer facing role? How can I help this? How can I help improve proactivity? So is it working with sales? Is there some more information I can give them? Is there something I can make it easier? Can I let them know ahead of time that maybe there's going to be some type of a problem? And I think when we're all thinking along those lines and working together instead of these silos, I mean, nobody means to work in a silo, but you become focused on what's really going on in your own department, and you're not always
You do.
thinking about how it affects everyone else. And so I think that these conversations really start to bridge that gap and to start talking about these really important topics. The other great thing about it is it's not death by PowerPoint.
Yeah.
You know how it is. You get these results, you get, hey, here's the information, let me share it with you, and everybody's just sitting through it. It's not that it's not interesting information. People find it really interesting, but people want to be a part of it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's the other thing that we've started to do is to share the results in a different way by having discussions within our own with our own people, regardless of whether they're just in a customer facing role or not, but everyone, hey, what does this mean to you? What more information do you want to know? It's really been a great change for us.
And people are interested, aren't they?
They are.
They want to hear that. So it's all new information. It's only those people at the customer facing people that see that sometimes. So I think it's a great initiative, and I think you can see how it's brought together different teams internally that's delivering this experience externally.
Yeah. Sorry.
No, go for it, Lisa.
I was just going to say, one of the topics that we recently took this deep dive into, this closer look at, was how we performed during the pandemic. And I mean, we're all going through this, and we're working in different places, and we're having to adapt to how we, have to work now. And whether some of us are able to sit at home in our living rooms or whatever and continue this work. But then there are people, in manufacturing sites and in other places, they're not able to do that, and they're working really, really hard. And, it's a collective effort. Everybody in the company had to really do more than they were doing before to make this, seamless customer experience, to help make sure that these water treatment facilities, these municipalities don't get shut down. You can't do that. You still have to provide these chemicals, and these paper mills. I mean, they still have to make these products. Everybody has to contribute to make the world go round. So, recognize when we were able to share that, hey, we had some really great results, that customers were really happy, and we were able to get the products out the door to them, to be able to share that with the entire organization, everybody feel proud of what they did. It was really, really nice and really great conversation that we all had, where there were different people on the line talking about their experience, around the globe. Like, hey, this is what it was like for us in Italy. This is what it was like for us in Marietta, Georgia, and it was just a really great conversation, and something that we could all feel proud of.
Yeah. I think a common theme that's coming through here, Lisa, is this communications piece, and and it's why you're in the right role in terms of the impact that you're having, and your role for customer communications, as well as managing the VOC global program. How important have these external customer communications played in the successes? We've talked a bit about the internal piece, but the external communications in letting customers know what you're doing and what you're changing, what you've achieved.
Well, the customer communications team, first of all, it's a very high functioning, dedicated team of really knowledgeable people. And the way that we work, I mean, everybody kind of has their own specialty, and they're working, alongside the business. So they're really working very closely with them to understand the customer needs, and how to develop key messages, how to communicate with the customer. And then I'm specializing in the voice of customer, so we're really able to all work together to put these communication plans together, to understand the strategy of the business. And the great thing about having this voice of customer piece within the customer communications department is, I mean, we're able to use, this data that we receive. So we're not only getting the information from the customer directly, but then we're also on our digital communications. I mean, we're getting a lot of data there about how information is used and what the customer is looking for. So it marries together really well. I mean, you're getting it from, from several different angles, and then knowing how to develop those messages and how to talk to your customers. And it fits together really nicely.
Absolutely. Well, and from the surveys themselves, you're hearing the problems they're facing, the interesting topics, so you can, bring it together, as you say, to make sure that it lands correctly, and they're interested in whatever you're sending out there.
Yeah, absolutely.
We've talked about how we've changed, or you've changed, in terms of how the findings are delivered back internally. But of course, that's probably in more pockets, so starting from this inside out change, how do you get the message across to 5,000 employees globally? That's a hell of a job for communication side of things.
It is. It's certainly a challenge. Um, Well, I mean, one, as I mentioned, our team is working really closely with the business. So when it comes to that, we have these monthly update meetings. So we're letting them know each month, like what's going on in the customer feedback,
Yeah.
and really keeping them, in the loop there. So of course you have the individual sales teams who are reading the customer feedback, but then at the management level, like maybe they don't get, the big picture of what's going on always, or they're not going into, let's say, our dashboard to get that information. So we kind of give them a summary each month, and that keeps that engagement high. Then, of course, we're checking with the business leaders when we're looking at this data. If it starts to, if there's something that the data is telling us, and maybe it's an area of concern, even something to celebrate, we let them know, hey, here's what's going on. And then we also, are communicating with them, hey, is there something going on with the business that it would then be causing, this type of feedback. So really keeping that engagement level there. Then I think, these open sessions where we're allowing any employee to ask questions about it is really helpful in doing that. And the great thing is, I mean, our internal stakeholders in different departments, let's say operational excellence or supply chain. I mean, they're asking for this data because they want to see what the customer feedback is and how their teams and their processes are affecting that. So that's been really, really great. We also, of course, we have some dedicated pages on our intranet where we're keeping people updated. We have an employee newsletter.
Yeah.
So we're always letting them know what the NPS is for that month. To try to keep, them informed. And the great thing is, this customer communications team, we're part of this larger global communications team. And I mean, they're talking with all of our internal stakeholders all the time. So we have a really wide network of people that are reaching the organization in different ways. So it's a joint effort.
And like you say, it's not one just silver bullet. It's you just got to do lots of different communication initiatives to make sure that wherever they might be in the business or whatever they're doing or whatever is of interest to them, that there's something at least that they can consume and at least keep up to speed in terms of where you're at, be it an NPS in a newsletter through to openly dropping into a Q&A session.
Yeah, absolutely. And just, when you're talking with people, I mean, you talk to people every day. So asking them, asking their opinion. What do you think about, customer feedback? What would you be interested to know more about? And I think that really helps to keep people interested as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My final question, well, we've talked a lot, Lisa, and you've given lots of pearls of wisdom along the way, but is there one piece of advice you'd give to listeners that you think can make a customer experience program a success? You've developed one within Camira, but is there one piece of advice? You've given lots, as I say, so it might be you can't just choose one.
I know, and I was supposed to say I talk a lot, so you just want one. I would say I have a piece of advice, but maybe just some little bit of different components within it. I would think, one, you really need a team of people. It's not just like one person, because it's not just me. I mean, maybe I manage the daily activities, but really having a group of people, a team that's passionate about customer experience to be a part of it. And from all levels of the organization, from uh, within your business, within your functions, different teams that can look at different within the customer journey, the different touch points, and come at it from different angles, I think is really important, because then they're also helping to spread the information throughout the company. And it really makes a difference when you can all work together as a team and think about where you want your program to go and how you need to evolve as you go, because as you mentioned, being agile, I mean, you really have to be flexible and agile in what you're doing. And then of course, it's that buy-in and that engagement that I mentioned. If the internal stakeholders don't see value in it, then your program's just not going to go very far. And so you've got to involve them and understand what it is that is of interest to them, and how it's going to help them, and try to to be flexible in your program so that you are getting that information and that you're able to give it to them in a way that they can really use it. It's not just about collecting it, but it's taking action on it. So what information can you give them that they can actually use to take actions on?
Yeah, I think that's great sound advice. And I think, if I bring all those pieces of advice that you've given, starting with the buy-in, as you say, starting with that buy-in from on top, that this is an initiative that's not going to just be a flash in the pan. It is going to be, we're going to build around this. Then, as you say, it's not an individual's job. You've got to have that team, the enthusiasm around that. And then once you go to market, listening to the customers, you talked about obviously the people, the relationships, but listening to them in terms of what can change, and therefore, how Camira have done this, if you've optimized and changed some of the processes of how you do things to make it life easier for the customer. But I think, it goes back to, again, your title and your specialism. Communications, if you like, wraps around all that, whether it's communicating internally, back up to the top, wider to your other colleagues, but also out there in the marketplace as well. I think so. I think there's so much that the listeners can take away from this particular conversation. So I need to thank you for your time, Lisa. I mean, I think for the listeners on the audio, at least, they can't see what that picture says behind you, but it's a map of the world, and it says she's going places, and Camira are definitely going places, in terms of what we've seen. So I think thank you very much for sharing this with the wider world.
And thank you very much for inviting me to share it. Happy to do so. Yeah, I think we all learn from each other, so it's so interesting to hear different people's perspectives and how they've come to success. We do. Yeah, there's not one way, and we're all learning. No. So I think it's you're right, and I think that's why people are so interested in this whole series. So thanks for being part of it. Yeah, thank you so much. I'll speak to you soon, Lisa. All right, take care. Bye.